Welcome to Healing the Capitalist Wound Speaker Series Part 1. I'm Jeni Rogers, your host. In this video, Marinelle de Jesus shares why she left a career in law to become a social entrepreneur. Through peak explorations and brown gal trekker, Marinelle creates inclusion and equity in the trekking tourism industry by advancing the voices of Indigenous women on the local mountain trails. Watch this video to get inspiration for your life and work. All right, let's do it. Welcome to the series, Marinelle. Thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to start us off by noting the fact that you left a career in law to start Brown Gal Trekker and Peak Explorations. And I would love for us to hear what inspired that shift.
You know, actually, the shift took us a little bit of time. It wasn't an overnight, but really it's accumulation of experience trekking in different places in the world, like Nepal, Tanzania, and Peru, of course. And while trekking, I actually became aware of the problems in the industry. And that really was the opening door for me to sort of become interested in the issues and trying to figure out, well, you know, is there a way for me that I can do something about it? And for a while, actually, I just sat on that idea because I was a lawyer for a long time. And I always kind of justified not being, not doing anything about it by telling myself I have a career in Washington, D.C. So why would I, what can I do with this industry? It's a systemic issue. And so while tracking, you know, people talk to me, porters especially and guides would tell me about the industry and the problems. And that really kind of just stuck with me. The whole idea that there's a lot of exploitation and a lot of issues in the industry, I never really shrugged that off. And then one day when I realized I really wanted to shift careers and no longer be a lawyer and not be a judge, I thought, well, I want to live in the mountains and I want to run a trekking company. And if I do that, then that means I have no other choice but to try to make a change in the industry because I'm going to be part of it. So I think the puzzle pieces kind of fell into place without even me doing much about it. And I think a lot of it was not just my own creation, but I think the world and just the universe itself is trying to move me that way.
So it sounds like while it was a journey and it did take time for you to make that shift into going to business for yourself, it sounds like there was also you really trusting that calling to the business that you ultimately ended up founding. Is that right?
Exactly. So I did sort of had hesitation a lot, actually. I said, well, who am I to change the industry? I'm just a tourist. And over time, I think the biggest lesson I have to learn with this journey is to trust, actually, to trust life and to trust the journey, to trust what comes to me in terms of signs and sort of people that I run into, trust that there is actually a path and a plan. And for a while, I thought I'm always going to be a lawyer the rest of my life. So I was very mistrustful of the whole process. But then the funny thing is people are telling me things like, don't you think you have another career happening here? Like you being a trekker? And I was like, why do people make comments like that? So the more I sort of became more, the more I paid attention to it, the more I gained the trust. And then eventually I kind of basically said, yes, I think there's something to it. I think this is a path. And sometimes I always feel like, there are times I feel like I didn't really choose this. It was more like someone chose me to do something. And and to me, it's still unfolding every day. There are times I end up writing an article and that creates an impact. So that's maybe that was meant to be. And then the next journey I'm going through actually is filmmaking. And really, to be honest, I had no intention to do any film, but now there is that movement towards that because it's part of an advocacy that I feel like it's going to be compelling. To be honest, if you asked me 5-10 years ago, I would say, hell, there's no way I can be qualified to do any of that kind of work and I can't make a change. But now I'm seeing a little bit more progress and I'm actually quite shocked that, now the industry has gotten so much better. We've got women on the trails here in Peru and we're getting positive feedback. And I feel like we came to a solution to this industry, which to me, to be honest, is the breakthrough of this journey.
your business and your work does center on creating inclusion of women in the trekking tourism industry. I would just love for you to share with us, why is that important?
It's important to include women in the trekking industry. On a philosophical sense, it just makes sense, right? I mean, why are we having an industry that's just full of men? And, why has this been going on for so long? Like, why do we have men and not women? And I think that's how it started for me, is to ask the why question. I started asking questions about the industry versus looking away. And then I realized, I came up with some answers to that question in the beginning, and they turned out to be mythical. Like, for example, when I was younger, I thought, well, women can't really carry a big pack, that's too heavy, that's crazy. Women are not strong enough physically, and women can't do it mentally, right? So I've been trekking for over 15 years, and I think as a backpacker as well, I carry like heavy packs, I feel like I've proven myself wrong with those assumptions. And over time, I learned, oh my God, these are just lies. These are things we have in our heads that are totally inaccurate. And I couldn't live with the idea that this industry is going to operate on an idea that's not even real. And I think that's why it motivated me to demystify that. To me, it's like, if that's really the case, that it's not real, then we got to do something about it. We need to include women then, because there's really no reason not to at this point. And what I realized and learned about this, which is fascinating, the Quechua women are like the prime example of strong human beings. They're farmers. They carry potato sacks on their back along with their baby. I mean, I would just imagine carrying a 20-pound, 30-pound pack is a piece of cake for them compared to carrying a sack of potatoes and their baby, so to me, it's like, it totally demystified everything. And these women are strong mentally too, to carry that much load, you do have to be strong. And this is high altitude mountains right here in the Andes. So to me, it's important because I feel like because of our misperceptions about women, we excluded them for such a long time, and with no with no real reason. There's no valid reason to do so. And because of that, we're depriving them of financial support that they can use. Because trekking tourism industry does have a lot of money, and the men are benefiting, definitely, but the women haven't benefited for such a long time because we thought they can't do it. And that's not just a bunch of crap, to be honest. And so it's important to work with the women to include them, because future generations of women should have the option to be a guide or reporter if they want to. It's not accepted. It shouldn't be the norm that we allow men to tell no to women when they hire, porters and guides. And that's still a norm right now. There are still a lot of people in the industry who would deny women the right to access employment in the industry because they're, using the wrong assumptions. And I really believe that if we can demystify all those assumptions, that the men in this industry will start realizing, oh, you know what? We were wrong the whole time. Of course, it's going to take some time to make the change. But eventually, I also believe that in order to sustain this industry, you're going to have to include women. It cannot sustain itself by just employing men the entire time. I think you're going to have both men and women to be part of it, because women can add value to this industry. They're great as guides and porters. They actually bring a different angle to the entire experience for clients. And there may be some hurdles that we're running into, that employing women would be a bit more expensive in some ways. But I think we shouldn't stop us from doing anything about it because of the finances, because there's still always going to be a market who will support the idea. And I think that's where travel industry is moving towards. It's moving towards more equitable, responsible tourism, not just with environment or the way you run the business, but also who you have in your workforce. It is the right time, actually, to make this change, and that's the fascinating thing. So I think we owe it to the future generation of women to create this inclusion, because it does create financial stability. Plus, also domestic violence is rampant in this industry, in this community. And when they become empowered to make money, they actually become smarter in terms of decisions that they make at home. And we're already seeing evidence of women leaving unsafe, unhealthy relationships and doing better with their lives. I think also from the perspective of a tourist, I think I've run into a problem where a lot of companies claim responsible tourism, that they do sustainable tourism and they promote, good, equitable type of protocols for their company. But the reality of it is not everyone is doing it. And I also wanted to make sure that as a tourist and a hiker, when you do this kind of trip, that you feel good about everything that you're experiencing. I feel like for the past 15 years, what I've experienced was, oh, wow, the trail is amazing. It's a beautiful mountain. We did the summit. How awesome is that? And then when I look at the porters, I see a different world. Like, why is it that their conditions are not like, it could be better? And so I want to get rid of that factor where, and I always felt guilty, as a hiker when I sign up for these treks sometimes, because I know they don't even have proper tents. They don't have, you can tell in terms of your clothing that they need to be replaced. So to me, it's like, wouldn't it be great as a tourist that if you go on a trek, it's a holistically, the whole entire thing is done in an equitable way. So it's not like, oh, this is great trip, the service was great, the food was great, the mountain was great, but then, oh yeah, did you remember, it's photos, did you notice that the shoes, they're falling apart? I mean, that was my experience as a hiker. And to me, that's just not, why are we settling for that? You know what I mean? Like, if we want to elevate the experience of a tourist, we should make everyone happy in that trek, including the porters.
How do you see that being done in a culturally sensitive manner?
So that was the question in the very beginning, before I started working with the women, and the cultural women in particular, and other women. I did have to ask myself, as a foreigner and an outsider, how do I do this without imposing and sort of just taking over and just wanting it, a certain way, my way kind of thing, and trying to control it. So I was very mindful of that. So the solution that I came up with, the best one, is to actually make sure that you partner with someone locally who's going to initiate the organization that is founded by locals themselves, that are owned by locals themselves. My partner in Peru actually has a co-op, so it's actually co-owned by the porters and guides. So it's a separate entity, separate from mine. I don't employ them. I don't have an employee-employer relationship, which I think basically creates a much more empowering experience for them. So what I do with them is I partner. In a way, I'm kind of like an advocacy arm to their agency, because what I do is I basically advocate for what they're doing, so that I tell the world about what they're offering, the kind of innovation they created with the women. And so in that sense, the operation is run by them. I'm not dictating. I'm not telling them this is how you should do it. This is how much I'm paying you. In fact, they run their own show, and I'm sort of I'm a partner in the sense of the most equitable kind of way, where I don't have control over them. I'm not their boss. And I think that's the best way I could, really develop this sort of platform as a foreign entity, is that I am just here to promote it, to be their partner, to fill their needs. I always ask them what they need from me to fill that role. And I never really try to do it the other way, where I need you to be this and that. I defer to them a lot, to what they see as the appropriate way of running a company, or how they want to run their business. I'm conscious of the conditions on the trail, the women and things like that. And the problem with the industry that I notice is, when you have an employer-employee relationship, that's when the problem comes up, is because then you create a power dynamics, where if you're the boss and you're a foreign entity, you're gonna basically dictate how you want it to be. And I basically took away my role from that aspect, and created a new kind of role, which is, in a way, I told my partner, like, this can possibly be just a temporary, role for me, partnership. Once I'm done with my mission in Peru, I'm going to move to the Himalayas and work with the industry there. And then after that, I'm going to go to Tanzania. So my business is actually nomadic as well, as nomadic as I am. It's a very interesting business model. In fact, this is kind of, I don't even know if anyone has done this. I'm sure maybe one or two people have been doing it, but I'm experimenting with this notion of a nomadic business model, where I'm going to stay here as much as I can, as long as they need me, as long as the industry needs me, so I can affect the change, and then I'm leaving. I'm going to go to another place.
What it sounds to me like you're doing is you're experimenting with a new way, which is really around empowering your partners, and doing it in a way that's collaborative and building on the strengths that you each have. So in essence, your business model is one of decolonization.
I guess, yeah. I never thought of it as a decolonization business model, but I think it is. I stay away from labels a lot because you know how in US we always have debates about PC being PC. So yeah, I think the fact I have to, in order to decolonize, you can't be one of them, right? So I had to come up with my own model, right? Otherwise, if I have the same model as the people colonizing, then I can't really fight the colonialism, right? So yeah, you're right. It is a way to decolonize and basically you come to a place and you give them the deference that they deserve. People, this is their tourism industry. It's not mine. I always, no matter what I do, I'd still be an outsider in this country. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's one thing I'm learning a lot, especially when the Native Americans women join us on the last trip. I learned so much about impact as a tourist and a traveler. And I think there's a need to be humble in this kind of work in order to decolonize, because as long as you understand your place, and there's nothing wrong with being an outsider. I think maybe that's what's offensive to the people who are doing their business in a colonial way, is that they don't want to feel like they're outsiders. They want to own this place, right? And that's the mentality all along. And I feel like that's been very harmful to the locals, and it's really ruined their psyche because it disempowered them. So I believe that the real stakeholders and stewards of this country are the locals. No matter what, the foreigners, if anything, if there's a war that goes on in Peru, they can leave. I mean, the locals cannot. So they have that's the only time they'll leave. But as long as there's profits, they'll stay, of course. So to me, I feel like we've lost the respect and humility towards the locals. And I think to decolonize something means to give them back that respect that they deserve from day one. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make profits. It doesn't mean that you're going to, your business is going to fall apart. It just means you have to find a balance. You have to find a balance between social mission and changing something and making it better, because after all, the real people, the real stakeholders here and the people who run the lands and the materials are the locals. And if you empower them, they're going to take care of the trails and they're going to take care of the environment. The tourists will not be taking care of the environment. The business operators will not do that. It's actually the Quechua community and the indigenous communities. So, it's actually a smart model if you really think about it in terms of sustainability. But I think we kind of get, we want to do the short-term benefit, profit kind of thing. But if we really want to talk about long-term and sustainability, we need to start thinking, outside the box.
How would you characterize your journey so far into leading Peak Explorations as an entrepreneur?
Well, this journey has been sort of, I don't know what the word is. It's just, it's very powerful journey, actually. I think from a personal and professional standpoint, I never feel like I left my lawyer job. I'm still an advocate. And in fact, I think I just advanced myself to the next level, because this time around, there are no longer protocols or sort of legal procedures that I have to follow. Actually, there are no rules. There are no procedures. There's no court. There's no judge who can make decisions. So this is the advanced level of advocacy where I am going to have to find my allies, and I'm going to create new rules, and I'm going to create a new business model. So in fact, I think if I think about it, it was such a piece of cake being a prosecutor in DC. They give you the statutes and the law, and here's the facts. Go argue. I mean, I can actually go there tomorrow and just do that, and I'll be like, oh my God, this is so much fun, But if I give someone this case, the biggest case of my life is changing this industry. And there are no protocols, there are no rules. The rules, if there are rules, they're being broken, and there's no accountability. So it's a very challenging journey. But at the same time, when you create a dent, and when women are actually benefiting and they tell their stories about how it's changed their lives, then it becomes such a powerful experience, overall, and I have no regrets. It justifies the decision for me to leave my career for this.
What is your definition of success in your work?
I think success is going to be dependent a lot on the people that I advocate for. For example, if I ask a Quechua porter, woman or man, about how things are going for them, have things changed? And if they tell me, we're getting better pay, we feel happier, we feel like where people see us, we're more visible, we feel more important and valued. To me, that's success. So to me, the success in my enterprise has to do with impact and the way it's impacting other people and the people's lives, not just impact in terms of if there's money involved or profits. I mean, that's, to me, honestly, is just secondary. And the reason why I would want that is because it has to sustain the enterprise so I can keep going with the mission. But the real impact and success will lie on the people that I advocate for. And that would be like the Quechua woman, if I go to Himalayas, the porters in the Himalayas. If they come to me and say, man, this just changed my life. I love working as a porter. It's gotten so much better. We have medical treatment, insurance, or whatever else. To me, that is success, because I think with this industry, if you're trying to change it, any kind of change that happens will be success. I mean, if it's a good kind of change. So I'm kind of counting those things, because you have to be motivated to as an entrepreneur, because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there are moments when you get criticized by the industry, or some people are not your allies. So you do have to count those successes. And I'm starting to see them now in Peru.
How do you invite tourists to be allies with you in this work?
Actually, that's a very good question, because I'm kind of on the verge of scaling that idea. I mean, I've done a little bit of writing on the topic of, the industry and sort of educating people. That's when advocacy comes in. And so I had to, because of, my writing skills, that was probably the most useful skill that I have for advocacy. So I ended up writing articles for different publications. That's one way to reach tourists. So I would tell them about the conditions, or I tell them about the women I meet overseas and the guides and the porters. And I interviewed some women and had a podcast interview with one of them. So I would share content like that to people. But I think it has a lot to do with media, the media entities. That's now the platform for change, really, for an industry. You can use, obviously, writing, and then, now I'm getting into filmmaking, because I'm starting to realize if you really want to reach a bigger audience, then video would be a better medium than just writing. And so I think I'm learning. This is the part where it's really important for me to learn, because after all, if I am doing advocacy, it's no longer going to be in a courtroom before a judge. And this is probably one thing that's totally changed with my advocacy, is like, wow, I don't really, this is not just easy one way kind of thing. You write a brief, you don't do that anymore. You actually have to reach out to people and to entities, and you're going to look for allies. So a lot of the advocacy and reaching the tourists will have to go through mediums of different media platforms. And, we're hoping that would really, break the whole mindset about the industry, that it doesn't have to be the way it is, and we can actually open this industry to women. I think as a tourist, and I've been a tourist for a long time before running a company, and we get into this mode of being passive about it, and we're sort of like, oh, well, I'm on a vacation, so this is supposed to be fun, and tourism is happy, it's a happy world. There is a dark side to it, because it is still an industry, and has a lot of imperfections. So I think as a tourist, what I would ask tourists to do is start paying attention. That's really how it started for me. I started paying attention to things, and don't ignore what you see. For example, if you're trekking in Kilimanjaro, you'll notice how different the treatment is of where they sleep versus the tourists, the food they eat. These are basic things you can notice easily. And then ask questions, get to know them, how life is like for them as porters. And that's how I started to gain the information that I needed to understand the industry better. And then sooner or later, you realize, wow, there could be room for improvement here. And so once you realize, what's going on with the industry, then you're going to have to start demanding, you're going to have to ask, not just ask, you can ask operators questions, definitely too. You can ask them, hey, how come you don't have women guides? This other company has women guides. How come you haven't done that? And I think that's what we're trying to get to a point where tourists becomes the tourists become our ammunition and our ally and our advocacy tool. They're going to be the ones to advocate the change. And they're going to go to an operator and say, wait a second, I heard about this industry. I read about this article. How come you haven't been doing that? And if you keep asking operators that, they're going to get tired of hearing that. And they're going to realize there's something going on with this that I think we need to kind of investigate and see if we should do this, because we're going to be lagging behind. And, and it's going to be competition. So I think once tourists start talking and speaking up and saying things and asking and just really voicing, because your tourist dollars, that's the ammunition. That's really what's going to change it, because you got the tool. Me as I can just make the fuss all day, but if you're the one paying an operator, then you can speak up and they will listen. So that's really the goal. As a tourist, I would just really advise people to start thinking outside the box, asking the questions to operators, and also being more mindful now. There are women guides that exist now in Peru. So when you go on a trek, ask if they have women guides. Even asking that question can really throw off operators, because I've done it many times and they're like, why are you asking me this? And it makes them think. I'm like, why? I think maybe we should start thinking that, and then you can have a conversation going on and to educate them. And that's really what we're hoping for, that one day it's just going to be normal.
Yeah, it's like the first step is just creating awareness, isn't it? It's like, what do you see would be the barriers to inclusion and equity that they should have in mind?
One challenge that's practical is that at times it could be more expensive to hire a woman. And the reason why is, for example, for portering, the men are able to carry up to 20 kilograms. So women actually only 15. So in the mind of a business owner, it'd be like, oh, it's better to have a man. It's 20 kilograms. It's better than 15. Now, if I have women porters, I may have to double up so they can carry 30, so they can carry more. So they're going to probably, the counter argument would be, it's too expensive to hire women, it's not practical. They may be conscious of the fact that women, in the portering here in Peru, the porters don't even have proper tents. They sleep in dining tents. Like there could be 8, 10, 12 of them in a dining tent with no mattress. Now, if you hire women, that's tourists will find it unacceptable if you put them in those dining tents. So which means as an operator, you got to buy them tents. So there are going to be arguments about money for sure. That's what they're going to tell you. But I think if you as a tourist tell them that, you should definitely invest in that, that's just how it is. And it's like, so if you speak up and you think that that's important to you as a tourist, that you see that kind of change in the industry, then they're gonna change their mind about it, because you can tell them how more marketable that would be, how more appealing to tourists that would be, to women, how that would be more appealing, that you're gonna get more women to sign up for the trip. So those will be the hurdles that I see in terms of a counter argument that, what would be the barriers. When it all comes down to it, the barrier will always be money. I'm gonna be honest, this is a for-profit industry. So what they're thinking in their head is either one, am I going to make more money if I do this? Or two, am I going to lose money if I do this? So, and in fact, I want to say that the trend that I'm looking at right now is that I think the industry is going to benefit more if they hire more women, because this is the trajectory right now. I think also women tourists love having women because they feel safer. So there is a market for this. And if you're doing this, chances are you're going to be ahead of everyone. And there's definitely market for this industry to grow. And it's just a matter of time. And we've seen a lot of demand now. Like a lot of women really enjoy the idea. Even men, they actually will tell me, I would prefer a woman, because, for a male guide, sometimes there's just too much ego in it. Sometimes they don't really listen to the clients because they're more like, yeah, I'm a boss. We've seen that happen in some of the treks where, but women are much more like open to negotiations. We've seen that as well. And so there is a benefit for everyone for this. So I wouldn't really, I would encourage people to speak up and just tell them, tell the value. What is the value for you to have women in this industry? Because that's really what you're going to be aiming for.
I'm wondering, in the bigger picture of your work, what are 3 goals that you wish to achieve?
Three goals. Wow. Okay. Well, one goal is definitely long-term goal really is I just want to normalize the role of women in the industry, in the trekking industry. Like I want one day to wake up and sign up for a trip and not question whether like I don't want to be shocked when it's a woman guide. Like I want it to just be normal. Like, oh, could be a girl or a guy. You know what I mean? Like we still have this idea that, oh, Kilimanjaro, yeah, it's probably a male guide. But, because it is a male dominated industry. I want to normalize that and make it such a boring topic. It's like, let's kill that issue. Women can be guides, like that's possible and it should be. So that's really an awesome goal to see in my lifetime. The second is I want to see more of ownership within the local communities to be able to run their own tourism. That the leverage of power goes back to that direction versus foreign entities with the big bucks making decisions and creating the protocols for an industry and giving deference back to them. I don't think that has ever really happened as much. And I've been all over places, and the only place I could think of with that much deference to their tourism is Bhutan, because hey, they regulate everything. The government and the Bhutanese people do their own thing, and they were never colonized. So that's a good example of a place where I found, wow, they pretty much run their own thing, which is pretty amazing. To me, it's like these locals are owning their own tourism. And that's a very beautiful thing to see because, if they're doing it that way, chances are and I mean, this is not always true, but more likely than not, that they're going to cater to their own, people, and they're going to make sure that things are much more fairer than not, right? Because a lot of the problems here in the industry in Peru is that the money comes out of the country. It doesn't really stay in Peru. But if it's being run by locals, then the money at least will stay more likely than not in Peru. And then the third, wow, okay, there's a third goal. Wow. The third goal really is I think it's just that I just want to have a best practices type of thing for the industry. I think, I was talking to someone this morning actually about different industries, and, in the coffee industry, they came up with a fair trade, type of thing. In some other industries, they come up with certifications. I realized there's nothing in trekking tourism industry at all to do that kind of fair type thing, And I think if we have a real sort of, concrete, I don't know if it's going to be an organization or whatnot, but something that is viable and something that exists that would actually police the whole thing, or sort of just like, hey, let's have a certification that, all these operators are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if we can create some sort of an accountability and sort of like a means to monitor, the product conditions, so that we can certainly, and global would be great. Like if it's a global thing, that would be a dream of mine. I can then go to the Philippines and stay on a beach and, be a nomad hermit. And then I'll just quit my, my thing in the trekking industry, and I'll just be happy, But I mean, that would be an ultimate goal, that we can change it, kind of like the coffee industry where you have the fair trade thing and the certification. If we can create that, then I think that would help a lot of people, because it's, changing the mindset is part of the process, and it's probably the most challenging part. I think the troubleshooting and sort of coming up with the measures and, oh, this is how the best practices should be, is the easier part, because once you have people change their mind, then they're going to be 100% with you. The problem is when you don't have enough allies yet, or you don't have enough people, be seeing what you're seeing. That's when it's stagnant and it's just like a dead end. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the moment when the whole momentum shifts, and now we just sit down at a table and come up with solutions and best practices. That would be the most fun part, actually, because then there's no turning back. You know what I mean?
And very curious about some surprising lessons that you've learned so far on your journey with this work.
It's kind of funny how ironic I would say this. I realized how powerful women can be in terms of changing things. And I feel like I'm seeing that a lot more, not just with the Quechua women, who I definitely have seen it over time, but you know, I've seen it everywhere now. Like any woman who speaks up about the issue, and to me that's very empowering for me, because I feel like I'm always isolated with this industry because it's mostly men running as CEOs, and so there's me, and it's like wow. But it's like a nice realization that with women, if you employ more women, if you have more women in an industry or an entity or an organization, that's actually going to be a powerful resource. The women are, the voices of women are quite strong, and I never really thought of it that way myself, because I came from lawyer field too, and I have to say it was very hard being a woman in that field as well. So I remember being, discriminated when I was a lawyer. Like the older men, the white men, would say things to me about my age, or that I'm this, young person or woman. You can't really, this isn't really your thing. I mean, I've experienced, but I have set, my own set of experiences of being discriminated against, and then, but to me, it's like, well, one thing I realized is if you want to really change something, you don't wait for anybody to do it. You do it yourself. And when you start finding yourself speaking up, the more you do it, you'll be surprised what can happen. Like for example, if you speak up on an issue, you'd be surprised that there are allies out there that's going to knock on your door and say, hey, you wrote this article, can you tell me more about it? Because when I remember in the outdoor industry, when I started speaking up about the lack of inclusion and equity and diversity, I started writing articles, and then I thought, why did I do that? I'm going to create a lot of haters, and they're going to come after me. And the surprise was there were people who actually supported what I said and what I was, the statements I made. So to me, I that's why if you're afraid to speak up as a woman, especially, or a woman of color, whatever else, I would just say, it may feel uncomfortable, it may feel against the norm for you to speak up, but you should, because chances are you're going to find your allies. 100%. Sure, you're going to have your haters, I mean, I do, but like, I promise you, you're going to have someone knock on your door and say, thank you for saying that, and even ask for your help. So that was an amazing surprise for me.
I know you have some really awesome stuff coming up in your business, and I would love for you to share with our viewers a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in terms of the tracks, we have a new one coming up, which is going to happen in March 2020 with the Mongolia. It's actually the all women only trek with the nomadic women of Mongolia, their indigenous group in the Altai Mountains. And we're doing this in March of 2020 for the Women's History Month celebration. So we're going to bring women from the western part of the world to come to Mongolia and walk with the nomadic women, an actual nomadic migration. And the amazing thing is there's going to be the women huntresses as well, the eagle huntresses, who are going to compete. So we're going to walk for 3, 4, 5 days, and then we're going to go to the festival, the Eagle Festival, where we actually support the women and cheer for the women who are going to be competing for the eagle hunting. And these women are going to walk with us too. So it's the first time I've ever organized this. My partner in Mongolia, I've known him for a few years, and we've been talking about this, but I wasn't sure how to execute. This is the first time that they're also doing this with all women. And so I think it's just a good way to learn more about being nomadic and just adventuring as a woman. That, it's really not true that we're not adventurers. There are women nomads living in the mountains, and how much more adventurous can you be? So I kind of want to demystify the myth that that women are not strong, and we're not adventurous, and we don't live in the mountains. I mean, all of that like craziness that they talk about with women, that we don't adventure outside, is going to break that barrier and just learn about the nomadic lifestyle in general with which is changing life experience. So that's one project. The other thing is we are doing a documentary in Peru. So that's like something I'm working on, and we're probably going to try to do a crowdfunding for it. So we're probably going to try to promote the project that we're doing. And the film is going to focus on the industry and the women porters and the change that's happening. So we can educate the tourists, like what we've been talking about this whole time. We're going to use the media to teach women and men about the change in the industry and how they can be a part of the movement to make the change. Other than that, we have the same treks that we offer every so often, every year. And so people can support Peak Aspirations by joining those treks. So in terms of just updates on Brown Belt Trekker, I do want to I think I can give you the link to this, but there's a mini documentary coming out that's took a few months. It's through Vice Media and MailChimp. It's a 5-minute documentary on my work and my shift from being a lawyer to a mountain nomad. And so that's going to give a lot of overview on my life before I became an entrepreneur, or in the process of jumping off a cliff, really. Actually, the documentary is great. It's for entrepreneurs, people who are shifting, careers. It's very inspirational. There are like 4 other episodes along with mine.
Thank you so much for this work, and thank you for your time today. I loved having you here.
It was awesome chatting about this. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Healing the Capitalist Wound Speaker Series Part 1. Visit healingthecapitalistwound.com or our YouTube channel to catch the other videos in the series. I wish you the very best as you challenge norms and create a socially just, thriving world for all through your life and livelihood. I'm Jeni Rogers. Until next time, take good care.